going southbound, I've been hellbound, riding on the midnight train. Going too fast now, think I ought to slow down, standing in the pouring rain.
What's going on, guys? Tristan and Tony back with another episode of the One Hell of Life Outdoor Podcast.
Let's go.
And today we got Travis Thompson on the podcast, and if you've been following us for a while, back to the OG Zero Duck 30 days, we had Travis on and talked a lot about the Florida waterfowl situation and a lot of different things, really. But Travis is really big into the conservation space. He is the owner of All Florida, allflorida.org, which they play a big role in the conservation conversation there in Florida and then other parts of the United States. And we're excited to have Travis on today to kind of just share what he does and, share the good word of conservation. And Travis, thank you for joining us.
No, I appreciate you guys having me back. Once every 3 years, that seems like not often enough.
Dude,
Yeah.
I feel like we're getting some shade thrown at us for the whole 3-year thing.
I know. We definitely need.
No, what we were trying to do, Travis, is be respectful of your time.
Yeah.
Because this guy, like, listen, y'all, you want to talk about a straight beast mode for conservation? This is the person. I mean, he's so inspirational, and once you start following him, you can't stop. Travis, thank you for being such a voice in not just the waterfowl industry, but just total conservation in consideration and putting forth all the effort and hours. And I know your family has felt that, you have felt it, and you're just a grinder, dude. And man, thank you for doing what we all wish that we had the guts and stamina to do.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you, Tony. Thank you guys for having me back on. I pick on you, but I love you. That's why I pick on you.
You can pick on me. I'm easy. I'm bald.
Oh, man. Well, Travis, could you give everybody just a little background about, who you are and what you do? Obviously, you're a waterfowl guide. You got allflorida.org. And I know I didn't even know this to listen to the Bear Grease podcast, that you basically kind of got like 3 jobs going on.
Yeah, so that's a great. I grew up a 5th generation Floridian. Kind of grew up in a house that was all about conservation, but also hunting and fishing. And I've started saying this more and more, but a conservationist to me is an environmentalist that carries a gun, carries a fishing pole, carries a rifle. And so I've got kind of 3 approaches to how I make my living. Well, two and a half, I'll say. So you mentioned All Florida. That's our organization here in Florida. It's allfla.org. If you go to allflorida.org, that's a school in Southeast Florida, and they will not help you with conservation stuff. And then we do anything that touches conservation in Florida. We try to play a role in it. So that's everything from ag and ranching to prescribed burns, fisheries, hunting. We even under the All Florida umbrella. I don't know if you guys follow it, but we have a thing called the Florida Gallery that's a celebration of Florida artists, and that's one of our projects that we do. So we do a lot of stuff there. We're in a lot of rooms. I'm actually doing this interview at the time of the recording from the Sea Trout Symposium in Daytona Beach.
Oh, man.
Getting ready to spend the day tomorrow working on sea trout regulations and science and learning everything I can about that because it's an important fishery down here. That's one thing. That's my passion project. And then I also have a duck ranching is our duck hunting operation. It's called Duck Ranching with no G. If you message me there's a high likelihood I'm not going to get back to you anytime soon because we need some rain, we need some water, we need some ducks. And when we have it right, it's the largest waterfowl hunting operation in the state of Florida. There's been years where we've just run hundreds and hundreds of people through it. But La Nina years are tough for us. So we're kind of watching the tropics right now and praying for rain down in South Florida. And then the other thing that I do, kind of my day job, is I work for the International Order of Theodore Roosevelt, which is a nonprofit that I kind of met up with those guys back during the constitutional right to fish and hunt in Florida. So we at All Florida partnered with them on getting that done. They're amazing. They are working on constitutional rights to fish and hunt in other states around the country. And so I go to some of those states and help try to build out grassroots and work on the language and see if we can't protect hunting and fishing in other places. So that's me in a nutshell. Those are the 3 things you'll find me doing at any given time.
Well, there's a lot to unpack there, and I want to unpack, honestly all of it. But I think just to start, because it was kind of the last thing you talked about there is, can you explain, Travis, to the people that have never heard of the Florida hunt and fish, or the right to hunt and fish, not just in Florida, but wherever that's been put into place, why that's important, especially in a state like Florida with all the development.
Yeah, the right to fish and hunt. There's 20. Florida is the 24th state to have that. So at IOTR, the goal there is to get it in every state we can.
Mm-hmm.
So Florida is the 24th state to have it, and what it does is it doesn't really change the way we manage fish and wildlife, but it does ensure that hunting and fishing will always be considered for forever. So it's a perpetual protection for hunting and fishing. So the way I like to describe it is, it doesn't change anything today, but provides a very important backstop or protection long term to ensure that we have hunting and fishing. When we passed it in Florida, a lot of people said we don't need that. Fishing's never going to be any danger. Hunting's always going to be around. We don't know what the state's going to look like in 50 years, 70 years, 100 years, especially at the rate that we're growing and developing.
Mm-hmm.
So getting that right ensconced in the Constitution, Vermont passed it in 1777.
Wow.
Because they had the forethought to think, hey, what if it becomes unpopular to have hunting or fishing 200 years from now? So we'd love to see that, at IOTR, we'd love to see that passed in every state. I spent some time this past year working in Maine. They don't have a constitutional right to fish and hunt, so we looking at that. And I know we're talking about it in Ohio, like getting ready to look at, can we run a constitutional right to fish and hunt in Ohio? So some other states where it would be awesome to get that on the books and get a grassroots community of sportsmen around advocating for it and getting it passed on the ballot. So stay tuned there. More to come.
That's awesome stuff. One thing I heard that you guys talking about on the Bear Grease podcast, which I thought was important, and I'd love to hear how the role that you play with not only your main job there, but with all Florida. You were talking about good versus bad development, and then the other thing was the key to it's good when you have land that is making money via agriculture, or running a quail farm on it, or guiding duck hunts, because it's kind of like keeping a barrier between that land becoming developed. So will you kind of just touch on, in Florida, I feel like a lot of people that aren't in tune with what's going on in the state don't really understand the development problem. And I like the way that you guys were talking about good versus bad development is one of the things you try to work with like these developers on.
Yeah, okay. So I think if you asked anyone what the biggest conservation threat in the state of Florida is, they would say growth, development.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll go and complain about it someplace and go home to their house that is in a development.
Right.
So there's a little bit of a hypocrisy in that conversation right off the bat, right? But at the same time, we all want places where you and I, we want to be able to go duck hunt, or we want to be able to go bass fish or snook fish or whatever it is. But there's people that want to be able to go bird watch or camp or hike or be with nature. And we know that in every society, historically, like I'm talking, you can go back to the Roman Empire, the Visigoths, whatever, taking care of your natural resources is going to determine success or failure of your society. So we believe that there is a right and wrong way to grow, and that can be.
This fall, elevate your outdoor pursuits with Williamson Outfitters, offering professionally guided experiences along Florida's Forgotten Coast. Whether it's coastal duck hunting, inshore fishing, gator hunting, or flounder gigging, every Williamson Outfitters experience is guided by a seasoned, licensed captain, delivering world-class adventure with local expertise. From small private groups to large corporate retreats, our fleet of well-equipped boats and experienced guides deliver first-class outdoor adventures for sportsmen of all ages and experience levels. Call or text 850-251-8650 or visit www.floridaducks.com to book your trip. Williamson Outfitters, making the Forgotten Coast unforgettable.
I'll say it maybe in an unpopular way, it's art, not science. So what we seem to be at a fever pitch in Florida right now with is every time somebody talks about a new development, people lose their mind because they don't want any more developments.
Sure.
But that becomes a problem for things like private property rights. That becomes a problem for your tax base. It becomes a problem for, I mean, not all development is bad. You can go to some smaller communities where we always make fun of a Dollar General being the first thing that opens up. But I remember a little town where when a Dollar General opened up, those people were happy because they had a place they could go get milk and bread that wasn't just the 7-Eleven. Like, it's a little bit of, like I say, art, not science. So I don't want to say all development's good development. I don't want to say all development's bad development, but there is a nuance to that conversation. And if we say all development's bad and we hate all developers, that takes away any incentive for developers to work with us on solutions. And there are plenty of developers out there that when they look at a subdivision, they may say, we're happy to develop 60% of this property or 70% of this property and leave 30% of it wild.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we could work with conservationists and determine what that 30% looks like. And we end up with a wildlife corridor that goes through an area that has people living in it. And you can have hiking trails and biking trails and the ability for people to interact there, but also the ability for people to see wildlife. And that wildlife is then able to traverse in a safe way to where you get the idea of a corridor is for wildlife to be able to pass through. So you can get genetic diversity, you can get prey species moving around, you can get predator species moving around. It's a really important thing. So I think we've gotten really, I'm going to say, dumb as a social media world in that we're like, we got to stop development, stop all development, no more development.
Right.
And that's not true. And that's not really like when you sit back and think about it at all, that sounds kind of silly.
Mm.
So we've got to figure out ways that we want to work with developers. We want to work with development to ensure that our state, as it continues to grow, it grows with development and conservation in mind. And I don't know if I said that well, but that's kind of the challenge that we face. And you see these movements online of, we want all developers out of this, or we want all developers out of that. And don't get me wrong, I've been frustrated with developers in my life plenty of times. But the fact is, we're going to continue to grow as a state. We need to influence how we're going to grow as a state and grow well, not stop growing.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things that it's coming whether you're ready for it or not. So it's like, why don't we, instead of building fences, let's build tables and see where we can work as a team here.
Well, and look at it from like, here's a take is look at it from like the big dollar developers, right? They know what their assessment is of land. Like for real, like if you're a major developer, like in that area, what the percentage of true chance of develop, we're going to buy this, own that, whatever it is, they've done an assessment. They know what the potential return is, or nobody's investing in it, right? So like he's saying, if we keep that at a balance to where they can have a little bit and we get to have a little bit, nobody's getting away with it anymore with that, like preserving something. Like just where we live, Tristan, in Florida, they're we lived right off there off County Road 210, in St. John's. And it wasn't a lot, but we heard some wood ducks and we saw some frogs and some snakes and some deer and things like that. And it was kind of a cool little area that everybody kind of just in the community cherished a little bit and said, hey, it's kind of cool. We got some wildlife that use this,
Yeah. When you were saying that, Travis, that was exactly how our neighborhood used to be, or still is.
Yep. Over there by Bartram Trail High School is pretty cool.
The other side of this too is, I think people from Florida that live in Florida is like 30% of the state or something. It's not very high.
Yeah.
So nobody's from here. Yeah. But I know a lot of developers that are from here.
Huh.
Not a lot. I know a handful of developers that are from here. Those are people that want to go fishing. They grew up fishing. They grew up hunting. They grew up with a grandfather that worked cattle or even on a cattle ranch themselves. Do I want them helping to decide what this looks like, or do I want a developer from New Jersey helping decide what this looks like?
Yeah.
I for sure, if I'm making choices, I'm not demonizing all developers. I want the first guy, not the second guy.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. And just from my observation too, it's always rare when you meet somebody from Florida, in particular, somebody that's a fifth generation Floridian. You don't run into that a lot. So that's it's cool to hear that about on the developer side that you've ran into that several times.
Yeah, the other thing I'll say is like we all get frustrated because we're growing so fast, and we do see this race to urban sprawl. But sometimes what we don't see is, well, first I'll say this: second paragraph of our state constitution says private property rights shall be held sacred.
Mm.
Like that's a pretty important line. And when people say, well, we should just stop all development, I would love to know how they're getting around that, because you as a private property right, you as a private property owner do have some level of influence over what you can and can't do with that property. And it's, I mean, private property rights are almost the pinnacle of rights that the state gives you. So that's step one in this. And then step two in this is, if you poll on private property rights, if you were to ask the average Floridian, how important do you think private property rights are? I'll bet you get 70-75% say that's the most important, regardless of political affiliation or anything else. Everyone likes to believe that this is my house, this is my yard, this is my land, this is the thing that is mine, and nobody should be able to tell me what I can and can't do with it. But then we want to tell you, you can't develop it, you can't change it, you can't do this, you can't do that. So I think I sound like I'm overtly defending development. I'm not. I think we have to be willing to work together versus being combative and adversarial.
Right.
Because I don't think all development is good development. I think we've done some really, I'll say, unsuitable land use in some of the stuff that we've done in Florida. But I think we've created a system where we've got a land race. And I don't know how popular this opinion is, but I wonder why we don't spend conservation dollars sometimes. Instead of acquiring land that's remote, why aren't we incentivizing development in places that need better development?
Mm.
And I'm not saying it's all one way or all the other, and I'll probably get some hate mail for even saying that. But at the end of the day, if we could incentivize development in places that do need development, upgrowth, redevelopment, those are where we could spend dollars. And by doing so, I'm not saying we're decreasing someone else's land value, but we might be holding the land value stable to where the impetus isn't as important for me to buy this cattle pasture, that's outside of town and develop it, because now we can add 600 new residents into a downtown area or into an edge area or into an area that's an in-holding that's completely surrounded by development, where we can do development there. Like, not all development's bad development.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Do you think when you look at the state as a whole, I mean, you're somebody who covers, virtually the entire state, and I would say largely my view of the state has been largely along corridors, the 95, I-4, 75, just going from one place to another. But I know you've seen a lot of the state. I mean, do you feel like the amount of, I don't have a better word than drama. That's not really what I want to call it, but the amount of attention this development crisis gets, I mean, is it completely warranted from what you're seeing out on the landscape, or do you feel like it's one of those things that people are just being extra precautious on?
I would say it's art, not science. So there's not one size fits all, not one recipe. First off, amateur hour driving 75, 95. That's
right.
Amateur hour.
Right.
You got to get on the back roads. Second off, I just think we live in an outraged culture, and we love to form mobs on social media. We love to form mobs in general. And that's not going to move the needle. And it's funny because we've talked a little bit at the beginning, at the outset of this, about the fact I run a conservation organization called All Florida. I could fundraise for it way easier saying, hey, hashtag stop development, stop moving to Florida, stop spraying our lakes. Like, I could go for some radical ideas that I even know are far-fetched and can't happen, but people will give money to that.
Right.
But the fact is, where we're going to get the most movement is in the middle somewhere, where we can figure out solutions. We can come up with solutions working collaboratively together. So there's a development we're looking at in Polk County right now. It's called the Stonebridge development. I think it's a really bad development. I don't remember the specifics, but I think it's 5,000 acres, 3,500 houses. They're expanding a city. It just doesn't seem like a warranted, well thought out development. but they're asking for zoning changes, et cetera. There's some rules and regulations around how that all has to happen. I could bore everybody to sleep around that. I just don't like that development. I don't think it's a good development. At the same time, there was a lot of outrage recently about a development adjacent to Paynes Prairie in Gainesville.
Mhm.
It was like an 80-acre development. It had already been zoned for development, or the landowner was asking for it to be zoned for development, but was not within the Paynes Prairie footprint of the state park. It was adjacent to it. And there's development on one side of it, development on the other side of it. Do I want them to develop that? In my heart, no, I don't. But at the same time, I'm not going to die on that hill.
Right.
Like, so there's nuance to this conversation a little bit, but you could get radical environmentalists that say we have to stop every development at all costs. Well, first off, no, you're not going to. Second off, that's not true. It's just not true. Like, you don't need to stop all development at all costs. And I go back, I can't believe I'm this much defending development on this conversation, but you go back to the outset of this, you all live in a house somewhere in Florida that was wetlands or woods or scrub at some point. I'm not saying we get to destroy all the rest of it, but there has to be some nuance to this conversation. There has to be a little bit of like, you get this one, but we're going to get this one over here. And we're going to trade and swap and work together to figure out what the solution looks like.
Yeah. And I think just on a positive note of how, outside looking in, development the state has done a really good job cooperating with, which I know you played a big conversation in some of this stuff, Travis, with these wildlife corridors. And, outside of what I heard you guys talk about on bear grease, the Path to the Panther thing, I was following that.
I was just thinking that
the whole
as you were
time.
talking
It was
that.
super interesting and how they were able to pull that off. And, I'd like to kind of touch on that because, I mean, it's like from a positive standpoint, what has been able to be done, in terms of not just what the Panthers were able to do, but securing those acreages for black bears to move through and all of that. I think, didn't you guys say it was like in the millions of acres that are basically conjoined together on that wildlife corridor?
Yeah. So if your listeners don't know about the Florida Wildlife Corridor, let me back up and I'll answer your question. But let me start by saying this. We love to complain about the things that are wrong. So again, this development, that development, this golf course, that golf course. And again, that's case by case, what's good, what's bad. But Florida has 6.8 million acres of public land. It's got the most public land east of the Mississippi River.
That's crazy.
Wow. It's in the teens that morning, and maybe you're chasing ducks or geese. But now it's September and it's 85 degrees and you're hunting early teal or geese. As a waterfowler, you need dependable weather protection that will not break the bank. Founded in 1996, Frog Togs is not only the leader in breathable wader technology, but a company you can depend on to keep you warm and dry, head to toe, no matter your hunting environment.
That's substantial, right? Like,
yeah.
So for a state that where we're complaining about a whole bunch of stuff, that's a pretty positive thing at the outset, right?
Right.
So then if you go beyond that, if you look into the wildlife corridor, the film you're talking about was done by Carlton Ward and his team. It's called Path of the Panther. I said it was on National Geographic. It was produced in conjunction, I think, with National Geographic, but it's on Disney Plus. If you have Disney Plus, you can watch it.
Yeah.
And what the idea was is if we could create these green corridors, these green infrastructure that allowed wildlife to traverse it, you get what I mentioned earlier, the genetic diversity. You get prey species that are able to spread out. You get predator species that are able to spread out.
Mm-hmm.
And you have a better natural state for everyone.
Yeah.
We look at it, like, obviously this is a hunting podcast. We look at it through the lens of hunting and fishing, but it's not just limited to hunting and fishing. It's all the other species that go along with it. And so if you have these geographically isolated populations, and let's say you got a population of 30 bears and they can't trade with another population of 30 bears, at some point they can get a disease, they can die out, they get hit by a car, you can have some kind of mortality that ends up jeopardizing them. By creating the corridor situation, you're able to allow those bears or those panthers or the whitetail or whatever it is to traverse these corridors and genetically spread out. And that's not to say corridors are the only way to do conservation, but the highest return for us is on that. So the Florida Wildlife Corridor, ultimately, we want to have 18 million acres protected.
Wow.
Wow.
Today, we have 10 million acres protected in it. and these are rough numbers. Don't at me if it's 10,500,000. Roughly 10 million is protected. So that means we got to protect another 8 million acres. Now that's land that isn't developed yet. But the idea there is a lot of that is working land. So we're going to purchase conservation easements or basically get a landowner to sell us the development rights off their property so they don't ever develop it.
Or donate it to conservation, right?
Anybody can donate land anytime to conservation, but most landowners, like that's their inheritance, that's their investment, that's their they need to make money coming out of it. So they could sell it to the state or the feds in an outright purchase or for a less purchase. They could donate it, or they could sell, in this case, like the conservation easement off of it. A lot of what we work on at All Florida is the idea of making it easier for a landowner to keep their land wild. So hunting is an important tool in that, because if you're a landowner and you have 10,000 acres, you've still got to pay taxes on it. Well, you can get ag exemptions, or you can get, whatever the exemptions are. Then you could sell a hunting lease on it, so you could make a revenue stream off of that. There's plans out there for payment for ecological services where they give you a dollar amount for having viable panther habitat on your land. That maybe it helps offset the depredation on your cows or whatever. You can sell timber off of it. You can do agritourism. There's things like gopher tortoise mitigation, where you could become a recipient site, and we could relocate gopher tortoises if you have suitable land for that. The idea is your land is worth, let's say you've got 1,000 acres, it's worth $25,000 an acre to a developer. $25 million that your land's worth. Well, the state's not going to give you $25 million, but we might give you $5,000 an acre or $10,000 an acre. So would you like to keep your land and continue working cattle, and we can give you 5 million, 10 million, something to that effect? That's the compromise solution that an easement gives you. And so if you look at the corridor, what we're doing is we're trying to, the term is encumber. We're trying to encumber the remainder of the corridor so it doesn't get developed. Now, every year there's money put into programs like Florida Forever. That's land that can be acquired for WMAs or state parks or, that's public lands acquisition. Then you've got your private land stuff, which is your rural and family lands, the numbers like that. And those are used to acquire like these working land easements. And all together, it all comes together and works. Ag, ranchers, timber, hunters, all of this fits together to protect this wildlife corridor that's going to allow wildlife to flourish and thrive. So when you step back, we definitely want to complain about the growth of development. And I don't like the traffic that's in my town and that it takes me longer to get to dinner now. At the same time, we just acquired 6,000 acres for the corridor there. We just acquired 917 acres for the corridor over here. We just acquired 3,000 acres for the corridor over there. This is going to take all of us working together to figure out how to solve this thing. And I back up to what I said a minute ago. It ain't all bad. We definitely tend to hang up on the things we see as the wounds. As Aldo Leopold said, we see the world of wounds as you learn more about it. But the fact is, it ain't all bad. We've got a lot of good stuff happening in the state. And we should talk more about that and celebrate that more. And again, try to work together. And that's what I see groups like the Florida Wildlife Corridor Foundation. I see groups like that really trying to work together to bring all the stakeholders together, the landowners together, the environmentalists together, to try to celebrate and work on keeping Florida wild.
Well, and and I've seen this firsthand, Travis, and one of the cool things about agreeing with the developers, you're bringing in folks that they're not hunters, right? Of course, we all know that hunters have been such a big part of conservation, but what happens is like, I'm going to use Guana River, WMA as an example. If you go there during the summer and the spring and stuff, when it's not hunting season, there's so many people that love that that land. They're just using it to take their kids on a stroll, go on a hike, teach them about a frog, a toad, whatever it is, fishing, whatever it might be. And the thing that I think that we like, and I'm just saying hunters in general, not you, because I know you got your eyeball on this, but it's just that those folks, why we help come in conjunction with developers, those folks become ambassadors of that property, and we're all joining arms with that, right? And I just think that I just wanted to point out how that falls into the balance. I think that sometimes we overlook it as hunters.
Yeah.
Well, every green space out there. I'm sitting in a hotel room on Daytona Beach right now, and I'm watching a squirrel play right now. Some little kid may see that squirrel and fall in love with that squirrel and wonder about wildlife. Like the ability to
Right.
see wildlife isn't isolated just to the corridor, just to a WMA or whatever. That's the importance of urban parks and things like that. Like people can connect to wildlife in places. I'm from Florida. I've fished in plenty of retention ponds and plenty of canals and things like that are completely surrounded by development, and been able to touch something that was wild, and it helped me fall deeper in love with it. So what you're talking about is exactly the same, right? As people buy houses and move to Florida, what I really what I want to bridge is that disconnect between them and wild Florida. How do we get them to care about wild Florida? And often what they do is they kind of, again, they fall into this trap of, I moved here, but I don't want you to develop across the street from where my house is.
Right.
Even though that's part of a planned development that was, mapped out before your house was even built. Again, not all development is good development, but I definitely think we have to take a step back and look at how we can work together and get more people to fall in love with, whether it's taking your kids to the beach. I'm sitting in a high-rise hotel. This whole beach is lined by hotels, but a kid down there at the beach could find sand fleas or catch a fish or see seashells or whatever and fall in love with something that's part of wild Florida. And I think that's what you're describing, Tony, is this connectivity that we have, no matter where it's at, to the wild places in the state. And we need more of that. We need to celebrate more of that. We need to talk more about that and pursue it.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. No doubt about it.
Well, I want to touch on the iguana thing, but just to kind of one thing I'm seeing in our state, like, so the Braves are doing something with Go Outdoors or Georgia Outdoor, Department of Natural Resources. They're doing like a interactive thing at the ball game. But like to your point, Travis,
cool.
That's a perfect example of like, typically, I mean, I'm sure there's some outdoorsmen and stuff that are going to go to it, but there's going to be a lot of kids exposed right there in Cobb County, that wouldn't have the opportunity to learn about the outdoors. So like those little things, just seeing a squirrel or just having somebody talk to you or whatever it might be, can kind of, you never know what kind of love that could instill in somebody.
Well, look at how Joe Rogan explains how kindergarten, his version of enjoying the outdoors was the first time that he went and did it.
Yeah.
He was just like, oh my gosh.
Well, I think
I had no idea that I could like this so much, Well,
I think isn't that some of the enjoyment we all get in like bringing somebody new into the outdoors is like they point out things that like, and I've got to experience it with my wife in the last few years, but they point out things that you just kind of like you're just so focused on, you've been years since you've looked at something that way, and it's just kind of a good reminder of that.
Yeah, for sure. A different perspective.
Mm-hmm. Travis, talking about, my dad brought up iguana, and I'm just curious. I know a few months back, there was talk about the north part of Guana being
susceptible.
In this conversation about development. What's the latest on that?
Yeah, so that died.
Yay!
What they wanted to do was a land swap.
Mm-hmm.
And land swaps are a pretty common practice. This is the bad side of it. And what you saw was exactly how it's supposed to work. The public, any developer, I don't care who they are, any developer is going to look at a piece of land and say, hey, how can I maximize the return on that? How can I develop that? Or I've got 10,000 acres over here. If I give you my 10,000 acres, would you let me have this 500 acres or this 800 acres? That's kind of the nature of business to some degree, is trying to maximize your return on your profits and negotiate better deals. And we've all met somebody out there that like they're in it for the art of the deal. They want to make every deal they can and always come out ahead. What happened with Guano, that was a bad idea. And before it even got to the consideration phase, it was killed by public pushback on the idea of a land swap. So there are situations, though, where you come and you've got a parcel of land that's an in-holding or whatever, and you say, hey, I'd like to develop that land, and I'll give you 5 acres for every acre you give me right there. And you can put it into conservation or whatever you do. So not all land swaps are bad. I think what I'm trying to hit on over and over here is the idea of nuance in this conversation.
Sure.
Like, not all land swaps are bad. The Guana land swap was a bad land swap. Nobody was on this side of it except the developer that wanted to get it done. And I think that became readily and quickly apparent to the ARC, which is the I can't remember what that stands for. I'm blanking out. It's been a long day. But the ARC is the planning commission that at the state level that does review, the review council. Acquisition and Review Council is the name of it. They review all land purchases, land swaps, and they determine, like, is this suitable for the state? Is it bad for the state? There's a representative from FWC. There's a representative from FDAX. There's a representative from DEP. There's some at-large representatives. There's somebody that represents the timber industry. So generally speaking, ARC is going to try to look at it through a lens and get it right. I don't even know where the members of ARC were going to land on Guana because it never got to them. It got told before it ever got to them. So that's how aggressive and well the public sentiment and outcry did on that.
Do you feel like, I feel like there's been several things, not just with Florida, but, the whole thing being blown up with the public land sale, but several things in Florida in particular. Like, I feel like I kind of have a little bit of a renewed hope in terms of, like, what hunters are able to accomplish when they I guess it's not just all hunters, any outdoorsman or anybody that loves public lands, the idea of it or any of that, what can be accomplished when people come together. Because I think the pessimist in me was thinking, before the last couple of years and seeing several things, like, man, I just feel like less and less people, because you look at the duck hunting numbers, I think there's a small uptick in bow hunting, but like, you look at some of these numbers that are going down because the boomers are dying and stuff like that, and you're like, man, it's just like less of at least in the hunting world, less of a voice in those conversations, which I'm sure we kind of touched on the first time you were on. But do you have kind of a renewed faith in like what can be done when people band together after what you guys in particular have been able to do in Florida, Travis?
Yeah, I absolutely do. If you look at, and I talked about this with Clay, you referenced that podcast. I talked about it a little bit with him. But if you look at, like, in the hunting space, what are the 4 biggest, most recent wins? You'd say defeating Prop 127 in Colorado, which was going to ban cat hunting at the ballot box, not using science. It was going to ban cat hunting based on a vote, which is emotion, not science driving wildlife policy. Bad.
Yeah.
You look at the restoration of the Florida black bear hunt. Mm-hmm. Huge victory. A thing that Clay and I talked about. We thought we'd never see that again. You look at the defeat of the Mike Lee public land sale, and then you look at Florida's right to fish and hunt, which again, first phone call Representative Mello and I had with a sportsman's lobbyist and another fella. The conversation was, there's no way you can get this passed in Florida. And it passed with 67%. So I think, I don't know how you look at all of that. And then you look at what I said about Florida has 6.5 million acres of public land, and we've got 10 million acres conserved in the corridor with a target of 18 million. Like, it ain't all as bad as we think it is. But I will say this, and I'm going to say this and definitely get an email or two. It is easier to raise money when it's bad. And if I can tell you a story that's bad, it makes it easier to raise money. And I frankly, I mean, forgive me, but I call bullshit on that. Like,
yeah,
do we have problems? Absolutely we do. Do we have some things that we need to show up for? Absolutely we do. Isn't that our job to show up for? Like, we talk about being advocates. We talk about being in the arena and standing in the fight. And like, that's what we're supposed to do. Like, I have recently been involved in, I've gotten kind of tagged because I got involved in the alligator Alcatraz thing, because from a conservation standpoint, I didn't like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't wade in on immigration issues. I don't wade in on a whole bunch of stuff. I'm not qualified for that. I can have an opinion as a human, but I'm not qualified as an expert on that. Yeah. But from a conservation standpoint, I got questions about it. And when did it become unreasonable for somebody to ask those questions? I don't think it is. Like, let's dance. Like,
yeah.
And when did it become unreasonable for you in a position of power to listen to your constituent asking questions? Mm-hmm. And I think what we've seen is, I don't think it's a problem. I definitely think there are some elected officials out there that don't like to hear from constituents. They don't like people to ask questions. But I think by and large, when you look at our elected officials, a lot of them don't mind you asking those questions and don't mind having the hard conversations with you about it. And I think we should reclaim that and have more of that. So I'm optimistic. I'm very optimistic. And I also think we do hard things all the time. We put a man on the moon.
Right.
50 years ago. You're telling me we can't,
We built
just
an
because
aircraft
we
carrier.
passed,
I mean, come on.
yeah, just because we passed this bad legislation this session doesn't mean it's that way forever. Why can't we
Right.
bond together and band together and undo it for next session? Why can't we, reclaim that land? Why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? I think we need to believe a little bit more in like the power of us as a group of people. And the other thing I'll say, Tristan, as you talked about the Mike Lee deal, we give the hunting community a lot of credit there, and I 100% give the hunting community a lot of the credit there. But I think we're so much stronger together, and I think there is a lot of the environmentalist community that does appreciate fishing and hunting.
Right.
The evidence I'll use for that is the right to fish and hunt passed in Florida at 67%.
Yeah.
So it got Donald Trump won the presidency. There are a million more people that voted for the right to fish and hunt than voted for Donald Trump.
Wow.
So that tells me there are a lot of people that don't agree with who we elected as president that do agree with, hey, we should have this right to fish and hunt. And the reason I'm saying all that is not to get into politics of it. It's to say, when you look at the Mike Lee land sale, it wasn't just hunters. It wasn't just anglers. There was a broader group of people that care about conservation that includes hunting and fishing that bonded together. The
Yes.
reason the wildlife corridor is a success and is going to continue to be a success is it doesn't say, hey, we want to protect ag and ranching and timber, but we're not interested in hunters being a part of that conversation because we don't like dead animals. The reason it works is because consumptive users are part of it, and it's a conservation tool. So this is a broader thing. Yes, we're going to win because we've got good momentum, we've got a solid team, and we're building that team out better and better every day. But the way we're going to win is finding those friends of ours that maybe they don't carry a shotgun, but they believe that we should be able to carry a shotgun and do conservation work.
Well, and I would venture to say you might actually know a number on this, Travis, but you say 67% in Florida. I mean, I got to think that maybe 25%, and that's being maybe aggressive, are either a hunter or an angler in the state. I mean, how many people actually, either hunt or fish in the state?
Oh, no. It's way lower than that. 22.5 million people, 4 million fishing licenses, including out of state.
There you go.
250,000 hunting licenses. So you're talking 1%. Like,
Yeah.
there's no reason to pass that unless people fundamentally believe in the importance of it as a conservation tool. And I say this all the time. I may have said something like similar to this or close to this when I did that podcast with Clay. But if you want there to be bears on the landscape, allow hunting for bears, and we'll ensure that bears exist on the landscape. If you
Right.
want there to be ducks on the landscape, allow hunting of ducks, and I'll make sure there are ducks on the landscape.
Yeah.
Gators, fish, redfish, snook, tarpon, whatever it is, allowing that consumptive use to touch it ensures that it exists. And there's people out there who will say, well, that's silly, that's imperialistic, that's whatever. Shouldn't the animal have the right to exist just because it should exist? Yeah, let me take you to Narnia through this closet and we can all sing Kumbaya when we're done, because that's a fairyland.
Narnia. Yes, I love Narnia.
Like that's a fairy tale, man. Like that's I get it, but that's
Yep.
some soft, squishy stuff that's not true. And look, we get down to 5 bears. Yes, we need to step in and make sure there's protections to ensure that bears are brought back and restored or whatever the thing is. And I should have even said bears there, but we are going to make sure that these species exist as game species. That's like the North American model of conservation. It's the most successful conservation model in the history of the world. It's taught in every wildlife ecology class in the country. Like to ignore the importance of hunting as a tool, to ignore the importance of hunting and keeping things wild, is to like literally handicap.
Do you want coffee that doesn't suck? Get the Duck. Dirty Duck coffee is made specifically for the waterfowl enthusiast. Enjoy flavors like Morning Wood, Dark Dynasty, Cinnamon Teal Snickerdoodle, and First Flight to unlock the flavor that you'll enjoy in the blind for years to come.
Cap yourself in the conversation. And I don't know why anyone that understands wildlife ecology or wants wild places would be against hunting and fishing as practices. So I'm optimistic, because I think what we're seeing is that conversation begin to ebb back our way. I mean, there's no tidal waves anymore, but I think we're seeing it's starting to ebb back our way. And I'm really hopeful we're going to continue to see it. And we're going to bring more people that are willing to have conversations around the acceptance of hunting. Like not necessarily more people getting out and carrying a shotgun and hunting, although I think that's great and everybody should do it, but more people that are willing to say, you know what, I don't hunt, but I understand why hunting is so important because it's going to make sure I get to go to this park or I get to go to this WMA and see the stuff that I care about seeing, the wild stuff. It's going to exist because of hunters largely.
Well, I think, you and Clay touched on a good point, about loving the resource. And you were just saying that, if you wanted to stick around, basically allow it to be hunted, because we as hunters protect the resource.
We're so addicted, bro.
Well, and like the other day, my wife, fortunately, we kind of we live in Duluth, which is in the northeast side of Atlanta. And it's largely, suburbia type, or that kind of environment.
Yeah, a lot of your ranch style houses are built like in the 70s. They're being remodeled and that kind of thing. Nice, mature neighborhoods.
Yeah, but it's not a lot. It's not like you're necessarily in your you got 100 acres out back.
No,
but we're lucky.
There's slithers.
We're lucky enough where we live across the street from 55 acres that basically, I don't know, long story short on why there's that land there, but basically to preserve the land and for tax reasons, they made it like a nature preserve and yada, yada, yada. It's still privately owned, but we see a ton of deer and a lot of absolute monster deer and a lot of young deer. So we're driving home the other day and there's a fawn standing in our neighbor's front yard. And me and my wife are talking about how cute it is. And my wife's, a hunter, so she gets it, but she's like, how could you hunt something like that? And I'm like, I love that fawn more than somebody that doesn't. But
right.
What you got to realize is like kind of what you were touching on, Travis, going through Narnia, is that if you take that deer in 3 or 4 years, whatever, 2 years, it's your trophy, whatever you want to do. But that deer is going to have a lot easier of an end to its life than it would be just by Mother Nature,
Yeah, and be respected and everything else.
And it's kind of like the sacrifice of one thing for the greater good of everything. But that was kind of just I thought when you guys talked about that, Clay, I was like, or when you and Clay talked about that, I was like, yeah, I totally resonate with that.
So there's two things you said there that struck me. One is when we talk about wildlife ecology and management of a species, be it through hunting or whatever, we're managing it at the population level, not at the single animal level.
Mm-hmm.
This is part of the problem with what I'll call the Disneyfication or the anthropomorphization of wildlife.
Wait, stop.
Like it's easy.
Travis, please say that word one more time for our listeners.
Anthropomorphization. Don't
ask
me to spell it.
I'm so confused.
It's giving personification to an animal. It's giving it a name. It's giving it qualities. Like it has a family and so that deer, if you guys name that deer, you will feel sorrow for that deer when it gets hit by a car or you see it on the back of a truck or whatever else, right? Like you develop an attachment to that specific animal.
Yes.
But deer as a whole, white-tailed deer as a whole, you don't have the same attachment to them as a species.
Right.
You have a specific attachment to that one. You don't have a specific attachment to all of them.
Right.
That's one thing that as you kind of talked through that really stuck out to me is like we do that and we see that and people want to name the bear and they don't want you to hunt their bear. Cecil the lion. Remember that conversation?
Yeah. For sure.
The other thing that stuck out to me as you were talking about that is there's a famous quote. It was in Outside Magazine. It was by a guy named Tom McQueen. And he tells the story of a hunter runs into a farmer. And the farmer says, why would you ever want to kill a deer? And the hunter's like, you wouldn't understand. I don't want to. You just wouldn't understand. And the farmer's like, no, you need to tell me, why would you ever want to kill the deer? What did the deer ever do to you? And the hunter says, I can't talk to you when you're like this. And the farmer goes, why would you kill the deer? Like, what, would you be willing to die for the deer? And the hunter says, if it came to that. Maybe. And that's a really dramatic way to look at it, but it's true. Like the love that you have for that animal, that species, the care you have, what it provides for you and your family is an intimacy that is hard to communicate to someone that does not hunt.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't care if it's a wood duck. And you guys are duck hunters. I'm a duck hunter. I don't care if it's a wood duck. When I get a wood duck in my hand, Every wood duck I ever hold, I'm like, dude, this thing belongs in a museum.
Yes.
I don't care if it's a hen. I don't care if it's a
Yes.
drake. I don't care what it is. I turn it over and look at it. I'll spread its wings out. And
It's
look
God's
at
work of art, bro.
I have been in on the killing of probably thousands of wood ducks. And the next wood duck I shoot, I will do the exact same thing I have done with the previous thousands of wood ducks that I've shot.
Yep.
And it's going to provide a meal for me. It's going to provide a conversation and a story around a dinner table, like a community thing with whoever I share it with. It's going to provide, I mean, the feathers I may save for flies, or I may send to somebody to tie flies with. I may mount it. Like, everything about that interaction that I have is an intimacy that somebody with a pair of binoculars or a camera cannot understand.
Yeah,
dude, I totally agree. I don't want to. I've been holding on to this one, and somebody that has ADHD has been very difficult. But I've been holding on to this one, going back to the whole bear thing in Florida, which to me is an incredible victory, because the first year we moved there, right before that, it was open. There was a great harvest. It was a good number. And
it was after that.
Was it after?
We were there for about 3 years. And
Okay,
it was
all right.
2015.
Well, older we get, we can't remember this shit. But anyway, it's a great victory for bringing it back. But let me ask you this, and this might be kind of a tough question to answer. What do you think that the bear attack had to do with public interaction into the approval process, psychological value?
Back to the bad news generation.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, do you think that it was just good timing? I mean, to me, I felt like every hunter I knew in Florida was like, let's go. And I'm like, but listen, there's somebody got injured.
That was a terrible
thing.
And I really encouraged all the hunters I knew to not talk about it, because it had nothing to do with anything.
Well, we don't like throwing negative stuff,
Well, and science, if you believe in the North American model of conservation, there's 7 tenets that go to it. Don't ask me to quote them all, but I could get probably close. But one of those is that science drives wildlife policy. And emotion should never drive wildlife policy. So any creeping in of that by either side, and I saw it try to be used by both sides, but the hunting community, I think, did a good job of tamping it down. But for a minute there, the reaction was, oh, we just had a fatality from a bear. We should leverage that on the fact that we need a bear.
That's not how it works.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
Yeah.
Bears are either a sustainable, renewable natural resource, or they are not.
So you see the same thing with shark attacks and stuff, really.
Well,
I mean,
it's exactly right. It's a reactional, emotional thing.
Yeah.
And
that's how we've wiped out species. Honestly, we don't do that as a society anymore. I think we've gotten a little bit less.
Wolves are
we've gotten less barbaric.
Are the perfect example.
We've gotten less barbaric with it, but it used to be like, we're man, you're done. I mean, seriously. I mean, that's the way it was, and thank God we're not that way anymore.
Well, I think
as a whole,
like you guys were talking about, when we moved up here to Georgia and we're starting to set up trail cameras up in public land close to, like, basically, the mountains, up in that area, we were seeing more black bears on trail camera than we were deer. And I'm like, okay, do I need to be, like, carrying my Glock out here? We're bow hunters. So I'm like, I don't know. So I did some research on it, and basically, on average in the U.S., quote, there's like 1.5 people that are killed by a shark per year, and it's less than that for black bears.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot more people that are frequenting areas where sharks are than black bears, but that just goes to show, like, how docile black bears are and how not a threat to, like, actually killing you they are. But they're
scared of you. Yeah. I mean, and I think you can just wrap that, Tristan, really into the whole predators thing. I mean, if you watch anybody that hunts Kodiak brown bear, if they smell you, most of the time they're gone. They don't want to have anything to do with you. You know what I mean? But there's going to be, as we continue to grow together as civilizations and getting in their worlds and things like that, of course there's going to be more things.
Yeah, but if you compare, I don't know the numbers, but brown bear to black bear, there's a lot more.
It's a big difference. Yeah. I mean, a brown Kodiak brown bear or Kodiak bear doesn't go around going, yeah, I'll just live off blueberries. I'm fine with that.
That's why they say if you run into a brown or a grizzly bear to play dead versus black bear get big. But anyway.
Yeah. But I think I underestimate coyotes a lot, to be quite honest. And I think people underestimate the power of a bobcat in many ways. I mean, it's just only because social media have we seen some of these like things where you see a bobcat jump out of a tree and take a whole deer down and just wipe it out. You're just like, wow, how is that even possible?
Travis, back to with the black bear thing. You mentioned Disneyfication of an animal, and I mean there can't be more of a animal that we see here in the United States that's felt that more so than the black bear, and of course Florida's got Disney, so I mean, how was that the biggest hurdle to getting this thing back going?
Yeah, the biggest hurdle was really like public sentiment, finding the, and I don't know, like the governors, unfortunately, the governors don't include me in their thinking.
Mm-hmm.
But the right political climate to bring it back, and you could ask Travis in a vacuum. I don't love that that's true, but it is true. We live in a world that's full of people, and there's going to be influences on those things. So, you had so much pushback after that first hunt
mm-hmm.
that had they continued to hunt the next year and the year after that and the year after that, the pushback probably dies down in fervor. But by stopping it, it definitely created a rebound effect where it emboldened the anti-hunting community to push back on it.
Mm-hmm.
We did a really good job as a state of working together to figure out what the solution needed to be, what the hunt needed to look like when it came back. And so it did come back, and I'm honestly surprised. Like, I mean, I told you 5 years ago, I wasn't sure the appetite was there to ever bring the hunt back.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are. So social science, human dimensions, the idea of what people do or don't think, I really... Like, I've always been a guy that's like, oh man, I don't want social science involved in wildlife decisions. But social science is like the idea, or the human dimension side of this is like, you guys like to turkey hunt.
Sure. Yep.
Every turkey quota in Florida is allowed, I think, 2 birds. That's not true, but almost all of them are allowed 2 birds. We could double the number of opportunities by cutting that in half and giving 1 bird per person.
Right.
Same number of turkeys would still die, but we would double the number of opportunities. What I just described to you is not a biological thing. Biological is how many turkeys are going to die.
Mm-hmm.
Human dimensions, social science is what's hunter satisfaction land on.
Right.
Maybe it's 1 turkey, maybe it's 3 turkeys, maybe it's 5 turkeys, and we cut the number way down. So those are human dimension solutions. Those are not biological solutions, because again, if every hunter's successful, X number of turkeys are going to die in a year.
Right.
That's like Arkansas with ducks.
That's what I was about to bring up.
Or Illinois with deer.
I don't want to cut off your train of thought.
No, you're fine.
Well, okay, so one of the hot topics right now is Arkansas considering going to a draw in some places, and one of the things that I've always felt that Florida, my dad too, was super unique about is like these waterfowl opportunities where, basically like, you talk about your Broadmoors, your, TM Goodwin, STAs, stuff like that, where for somebody that doesn't have all the time in the world, I mean, if you're lucky enough to pull one of these lottery hunts, I mean, you essentially you're going to see ducks, and you have an opportunity to harvest a decent amount of ducks. And I've always looked at the lottery system as a positive thing from that aspect.
Oh, I think they've been a leader in it.
Yeah, and I think, in terms of waterfowl, I don't know how other states handle it, but like, you mentioned the turkey thing, and obviously Florida's thing is everyone wants to come here and kill an Osceola turkey. And I feel like there's like some parallels between Arkansas, you're wanting to go hunt the public timber.
Iowa, big bucks.
Those same people still want to come and get their Osceola in Florida. And I guess from a Florida resident's perspective, Travis, this is kind of like a loaded kind of question, I guess. But do you feel like, at least for, like, how would you feel, for example, if they made out-of-staters where you could only kill 1 turkey and maybe it was a draw to even come to Florida? I mean, from my perspective as an out-of-stater now, I wouldn't have a problem with it, because if I had a better odd chance of on public land harvesting said turkey because it was a little bit more restricted for
I cherish
out-of-staters,
it more.
I would be like, sweet. And kind of the same way I kind of feel with some of the land in Arkansas. I don't think all of it should be a lottery, because there's something to be said for going out on public
Tradition,
land.
yeah, man.
But, the opportunity to apply for some places where it's like, man, if once in 5 years I pull that, it's going to be a hell of a hunt.
Mm-hmm.
You are asking the wrong guy that question.
Okay.
The reason I'll tell you that is I want opportunity access open,
Yeah.
and I want good conservation practices in place. Whether or not we can hunt alligators 24/7, I don't care.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not, so to me, that's a hill that I just don't have I don't even have a thought on it. And that's crazy, because I have a thought on everything. I don't have a thought on it. I can't even put together rational words on how I feel about it. I am typically a guy that says I want the ability to go to other states and hunt. So I want people to have the ability to come here and hunt.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I also, we're sitting here talking about it on a podcast. I ran a pretty big podcast for a long time.
Yeah.
I watch lots of YouTube shows where they come and they hunt on public land and they teach you how to pull quota permits. And there's organizations out there that'll teach you how to do that. I think it's really interesting to me when I watch demonization of out-of-state hunters or pushback on out-of-state licenses that's led by folks that are capitalizing on going out of state and running hunts, or coming into my state and running hunts. So I just think that's one of those things that I just can't get worked up over the solution to.
Yeah.
I think whatever we end up doing today, we'll change it in 10 years. And then 10 years after that, we'll come back to whatever we're doing today.
Right.
Because I don't think there's a perfect solution to it. I think it's one of those things that just got kind of ebb and flow.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a nuanced thing, and I totally respect, I would never want it to be a situation where you can't go to a state and you cannot have plenty of opportunity to just walk out on the landscape on public land and be able to target whatever it is, but in select opportunities, which I couldn't tell you what that would be in any state, I think it's cool for select opportunities.
Yeah. Now, hey, Travis, so I told Tristan, I said, number one question I wanted to ask Travis, and this actually that I will give my boss credit to, with dealing with potential customers. He said one of the best questions you can ask somebody, and I'm just on this kick with it, is what keeps you up at night? Well, that's what I want to hear. That's what I want to hear from Travis Thompson. When you're laying there, I mean, dude, listen. I have so much ADHD that I try to comprehend how much information you can process. And dude, thank God there are people like you that can do what you do. And I don't have the capacity. I just don't. I mean, I really don't. I'm being honest with myself. That's my weakness. That's what it is. But for you, obviously that's you shake the magic 8 ball and it changes all the time, but what is that thing for you?
Man, that's a loaded question, Tony, because I think I'm so in it on the conservation side that I don't, obviously, there's some big wins, and I party hard when we have a big win.
Yeah.
But the fact is, if you'll forgive me, let me just rattle for a second.
Oh yeah, dude. That's what the whole point is.
I'm a big fan of the concept of game theory. And if you've never read The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek, it's a great starter book on game theory. And in that book, he talks about how there are games and there are infinite games. A game that's defined would be a game, or a finite game would be a game like baseball.
Mm-hmm.
You play 9 innings, you get 3 outs per half inning, you get 27 outs a game. The team with the most runs on the scoreboard, and this is how you score runs, wins. That doesn't exist in conservation.
Yes.
Right? Some days we pass a constitutional amendment. Other days we get a black bear hunt. Other days we reopen an oyster fishery, or we change shrimp regulations, or we keep something from ever happening that you'd ever see the light of day on.
Yeah.
I have moments where whatever inning we're in, or whatever the current situation is, I'm cognizant of, and it'll keep me up at night for a night or two. But generally speaking, we come up with some strategies and we go and we execute those strategies.
Yeah.
the goal is not to win or lose because there's no end to this game, right? The end is a meteor hits the planet or I die.
Yeah.
But when I'm gone, if the meteor doesn't hit, somebody else is going to be playing the conservation game
Yeah. Right.
for decades and decades. I hope and pray there's a whole bunch of people doing it. So when you ask what keeps me up at night, like from the conservation side, not a lot keeps me up at night. I mean, during Amendment 2, yeah, there were nights when I was eating Tums and thinking, gosh almighty, are we going to get everybody to vote for this or not? Like that kind of stuff happens in the moment, but long term it doesn't. I will say what I worry about right now is what I see as a mob movement in the social media world. And it doesn't keep me up at night, but I'm aware of it. And that's things like reforming the FWC commission or this anti-development, all development is bad development stuff. Because where I see that in a game theory lens is those people are playing a finite game. They view it as a win or a loss with whatever they're looking at. So if they can reform the FWC commission, they win.
Yes.
But they don't understand the next 7 moves that are going to have to come after that. And when they reform the FW commission, that means they're going to turn it into a statutorily created agency, or they're going to make it elected positions, or they're going to make it, a different type of constitutional agency that has different definitions around who they don't do and don't appoint. All of those are moves in the game that are going to require counter moves back from us. And so this isn't checkers where you just jump the piece in front of you, which is how they're playing it. This is chess where you need to think 6, 7, 8, 9 moves ahead. And I think there's no strategy involved in that. There's no critical thinking involved in that. It's emotional and reactionary. And so I don't know that it keeps me up at night, but it's definitely a thing I think about quite a bit. Because I think it's so short-sighted. I think it's so poorly executed. And I think the unintended consequences that those people don't realize that they're playing with, if it ever gets traction, if it ever gets movement, will have a domino effect for someone like me. And then I will be up at night because we'll have some problems. Or I'll go work, in the private sector and make money instead of doing this.
Well, I will tell you this. Based on everything I know about you, and this, I'm happy that I waited to talk about this because without the weight of people like you and us as media outlets like ourselves right now in this podcast, we're talking about how Travis does so much for conservation. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you don't know what your fit is as you develop as a hunter, as an outdoors person. You just enjoying it however you enjoy it, right? But as you kind of go down that road, you're like, man, I want to be the best duck call maker. Or I want to plant the best millet field. Or I want to share that experience with a young child. Or whatever it is, you hook onto this little passion piece, right? I want to be a waterfowl biologist.
Yeah.
Whatever that passion is. What I love about having Travis on here, and Travis and you being such a strong piece in what you do, is that somebody's going to listen to this, whether it's us or somebody else that you're influencing, and they're going to go, I want to be Travis Thompson. I want to be that. Like, that's the piece. Like, me personally, I always attach to the biological side of waterfowl and deer and everything. Like, I want to know, like, when they hatch, when they drop their antlers, all this stuff, right? I'm, like, into that, me personally. But sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And you get into this and you hear something like Travis and you go, son of a gun, that's where my passion is. You know what I mean? And applaud to you for kind of creating that sector for somebody to fit their passion into. Does that make sense?
No, and I appreciate you saying that immensely, Tony. I hope no little kids want to grow up and be me because God almighty, prayers for your parents. But it really is like Aldo Leopold. Everybody, when they read Aldo Leopold and they talk about Aldo Leopold, he had a thing he called the land ethic.
Yeah.
And I've often said, what I want to leave behind is a thing called a conservation ethic. And that can look very different for every person out there. So it's really hard. People will message me and say, hey, how do I get involved in conservation? what do you care about?
Whoa. Yeah. What a
You,
big
you know,
question.
so like it's easy for me to, and often they'll say, "Hey, I want to get involved in conservation, but I'm not sure about going to a meeting." Okay, well, that's because that's not for everybody. Although I think more people should attend meetings and figure out how to get engaged in that. But like, what is it that you care about? Do you care about fish? Do you care about ducks? Do you care about birds? Do you care about turtles? Do you care about dirt? Do you care about water? Do you care about plants? Do you care about stars? And like, there's all sorts of aspect to this, and all of us are different.
Yeah.
My buddy, when we did cast a blast, Nate would always say, "People are whole ass people."
True.
We talk about it as though, one size fits all and it's a recipe and you could just go figure out this thing. And I don't think anything's a recipe. I mean, I don't think anything is a recipe.
Nope.
And we definitely boil it down to, hey, you can come to this banquet and pay your $75 and now you're doing conservation. And that's not reductive to banquets, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you might not connect to that, right?
But it might not be your thing. Like, there's so much out there.
Yeah.
That's why there's different denominations in church, right? I mean, honestly,
it's exactly right.
It is exactly. I mean, it just hit me. Praise you, Jesus, baby, Jesus. But but seriously, really, I mean, it comes down to that we don't want to. We have us as believers. We don't have to say anything about any believer, right? We just, like my grandpa used to say, just go to church. I never knew how powerful that was. But it's the same thing. Like, get involved.
It's when I say a conservation ethic, for me, I'm super good on policy and advocacy, and I do good public speaking. Like, public speaking is not a fear for me, but I know people that petrify, lock up when they talk about public speaking.
Sure,
like they cannot do it. I would not recommend that they go do public speaking. Like, that's a terrible idea.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm all for people working with their fears or whatever, but that's a terrible idea. At the same time, there's people out there that build drug boxes, or they go and just pick up trash on a lakefront or whatever.
Yes.
That's their conservation ethic, and that's how they enter and exit the conversation.
Yep.
But I'm going to tell you what is not a conservation ethic is just reposting stuff and shouting stuff on social media.
Right.
I told you guys he was going to get your ass. No, this is what I love about you, Travis, is that you're bold enough to say, look, step up to the plate.
Yeah, look, like my dad was, I love my dad, but my dad, taught me a lot of things and instilled a lot of things to me. And one of those is doing the right thing is never the wrong thing.
Mm.
And when I watch stuff like what unfolds in conservation, like I said, it's not all bad. In fact, most of it's pretty good. But at the same time, when I see something bad, I've never been afraid to say, hey, I don't agree with that. It doesn't mean I jump up and down and yell and pitch a fit, but I definitely have never been afraid to say what I think. And that's always served me well in my life. Don't know that it serves me well necessarily with all the politicians, and don't know that it serves me well in fundraising, but it served me well in my life. So I'm going to keep doing it.
Two things kind of come to mind, Travis. One thing I've said before on this podcast is, like, if I think as somebody, like, you mentioned there's like no, perfect kind of fit to it. And like, there's been times where I'm like, man, this is kind of like overwhelming to like even think about some of these things for me. But like, what it kind of boils down to me is like, if you're listening to this and it's like, okay, what's one thing you could do this season? There's a lot, obviously, you could go volunteer to help ban wood
pick up some trash,
whatever, but one thing that's always when you like really boil it down is like, if you strive to take somebody new hunting that has to take their hunter safety certification, has to buy a hunting license, so basically now you got dollars going into Pittman Robertson, and then you're going into getting the state involved in terms of getting the licenses. That's something simple if you're listening to this, that you're like, man, what is something as a hunter I can do to make it?
Maybe you're introverted, right? Yeah. And you just want to do something.
Just get somebody new.
Buy a duck stamp.
Go hunting,
Buy a duck stamp, even if you don't hunt. I mean, little examples.
Yep. And the other thing is, shoot, now I'm drawing a blank. This was the one that I was more interested in hearing what you had. What Travis? Shit. Damn it! Now I'm drawing a blank on what I was going to say about that. And maybe it'll come back to me. But one thing I had written down, Travis. Hopefully that'll come back to me because it was kind of in the same vein. and I really wanted to hear your thoughts on it. But one thing since the last time we had you on, I don't believe at the time you had the duck ranching thing going on. You were talking a little bit at the beginning about managing that land, and
he was just getting kind of started, I think, a little bit with it.
Yeah, and I definitely want to hear a little bit about what it's like, working with I think it's your friend Matt, right?
Matt Pierce, yes, sir.
Yeah, and but one thing that was really cool is the whole snail kite thing that you guys did on that property, and like I didn't even know what a snail kite was.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden I'm invested in like seeing all the snail kite content out of duck ranching, and so I just thought that was cool. So I'd like to hear a little bit about what it's like managing that land. I know you said this year's a tough year, and then also if you wouldn't mind giving us a crash course on snail kites, I think.
Yeah, I guess, and even to compound that, there's a lot of biodiversity there. That one thing is off of another thing, so it comes from a tadpole to a whatever. Yeah, I mean, what's that been like?
Yeah, so I'll tell you the key to managing land well is to have a rancher in your camp that knows how to manage land. That's the expertise I have on managing land. I mean,
fair enough.
It's funny because we have learned so much together over this. And Matt is an expert at raising cattle, and he's an expert at reading land, and he's taught me so much. That's Matt Pierce, P1 Cattle Company. I'll give you a quick example of one of the things we learned the first time we ever did a duck hunt together. We weren't together. Matt was at a gator game, and he's like, all right, these are where all the ducks are, these impoundments, these fields. And I'm like, awesome, dude, we're going to wreck them. So Matt's like, well, I'll get all the cows out of here, Friday so that they're not in the way for your hunters. I was like, awesome, that sounds great to me. So he moved the cows from pasture A to pasture B. Well, Saturday morning, we go in there to hunt. Guess where all the ducks went?
Pasture B.
They went with the cattle.
That's exactly
so we quickly,
right.
and we adapted and had a good hunt because we figured that out, pretty quickly. But what we learned was where the disturbance happens is where the birds want to be. And so you got cattle out there creating disturbances, and ducks follow them around, and snail kites follow them around, and everything else. And we learned a lot about what we could and couldn't plant, when we could and could not plant it, how we could do with pumps, how we could do with moving water. It was literally just a trial and error, but I had a huge advantage because I have this guy that understands land through a different lens than I ever possibly. I mean, I'd have to build a time machine, go back to school, go to school for ag, ranching, learn all that stuff, and then practice it for 25 years to catch up to where Matt is.
Man,
like it's just not possible. And he's got some stuff where he can help me curve some of those. But he's just so good at this, like reading grass, reading what's growing, how it's growing, what water's doing, how it's going to move. And then, so if you take all that, if you want the snail kite story, snail kites are an endangered bird in North America. And there's Audubon estimates there are about 3,000 of them left in the United States. And all of those are in Florida. So we see them periodically when we hold watering impoundments. We'll see actually quite a few of them, but it was 10, 15, 20. We had this year where the water level got right. And these birds, they have such a selectivity, they will feed almost exclusively on apple snails. And we have an invasive apple snail in Florida. And they're the ones that lay pink eggs. When you see snail eggs in Florida, they'll be white eggs or pink eggs. So these are the ones that lay the pink eggs.
Okay.
These apple snails, you could look across our field, and we had the water level exactly right. And it had a pink sheen to it because there were so many eggs on our millet that we were growing.
Holy cow.
Yeah, it was like when it would blow in the wind, it kind of looked like it was kind of shimmery pink. So when those snails hatched, those birds found them. And we had over 10% of all the snail kites in North America on our singular property.
Holy cow.
So we did a count, and of the 3,000, we had over 300 there. And so I called U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and I'm like, hey, there's a lot of snail kites here. What should we? Matt and Audubon said, yeah, they do that. And that was kind of it. And we were like, no, we're not taking that answer, Audubon. So I called FWC and I called U.S. Fish and Wildlife. I'm like, hey, we've got a lot of snail kites here. And the lady at U.S. Fish and Wildlife is like, do you know what a snail kite looks like? When I told her, I was like, there's hundreds of them. She's like, do you know what a snail kite looks like? But when I called Tyler at FWC, he's like, I want to come see this. So we set up a day. They came out. University of Florida came out. They do research on them. And this is the same thing. The girl from the University of Florida, she's like, do you know what a snail kite is? Because you said there were hundreds of them. I was like, yes, ma'am. You just sit tight. So we drove them in, and obviously there were a few flitting around that you could see as we kind of drove through our gate. But we turned a corner, and they were all sitting in a tree. And I said, do you see that tree full of snail kites? And she goes, those are vultures. And this is a bird scientist. She goes, those are vultures. I was like, no, those are all snail kites. I said, there's one vulture and one cormorant in it. The rest are snail kites. And she gets out her binoculars. She goes, oh my gosh, that's a Christmas tree if I've ever seen one. And she started counting. And I think there were like 60 or 80 sitting in that single tree.
Wow.
Jeez.
They said, are there any nests out there? And I was like, man, I wouldn't know a snail kite nest if it fell and hit me in the head. Like, I just don't know what they are. Like, I don't know. Sure, probably nests. So they started looking and like, well, there's a nest and there's a nest and there's a nest and there's a nest. And we started counting. And I think we ended up with, I'm going to hit you with a number, and I think it's right. I think we had 68 or 62 nests or 72 nests, something like that. It was in the 60s. We had that many nests, and then we banded roughly the number of nests, that many babies, because there's usually 3 babies per nest, so or chicks or hatchlings or whatever they call them. We banded roughly that many. I think we banded like 62 or 68 because there were some of the nests where we couldn't get to them. They were too high up, or the nest failed, or a predator got to them, or they hatched and flew away before we got to them. So all in all, we guess that we produced probably 100 new snail kites with our 300 snail kites. So we positively affected the population in the state by like 13%.
Holy
just with this property that we were managing for hunting and cattle.
Wow.
Which is, to me, the conservation story in all this.
Yeah.
Matt leases that property to run cattle on. It's a WRE, a conservation easement, so we were able to store water on it. We store the water so that we can hunt ducks. Those two practices created a perfect situation for snail kites, this endangered bird that no one's ever going to hunt, no one's ever going to pull the trigger at or anything else. Created a perfect situation for those birds to thrive and produce, probably 100 chicks that year that went off and did snail kite things, and hopefully are making baby snail kites wherever they are now. We can't recreate that. Next year we will probably be able to recreate it. It will not be a La Nina year, and we'll probably be able to recreate that nesting for those snail kites again. But it's a really cool conservation story, and it's how it's supposed to work.
That's awesome.
Man, that's really cool. I'm glad that you shared all that, because I didn't realize the depth of all of it. Just from social media, it's just like, oh wow, these are cool endangered birds, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's really neat. Well, Travis, obviously we know you're a busy guy, and we could probably honestly talk to you for 4 hours and
easily
keep asking things, but you want to be respectful of your time too. And we got this segment we're doing, like listener question of the week. And basically, we highlight whoever asked the question, and we send them like a little care package and that kind of thing. But I thought this one would be a good one to include you on too, because the question was, what outdoor experience as a child has influenced your trajectory / path forward as an adult? And I'm like, if there was this would be a good person to ask that, I feel like, especially as a 5th generation Floridian.
Yeah.
It's funny. I would say the thing that's influenced my trajectory the most as an adult is twofold. One, it was not an outdoor experience. Is my sister and I joke, still to this day, we joke about the lectures that Dad would give us at the dinner table. And he would lecture us on wastewater and conservation and the environment. And he probably wasn't lecturing. He's probably just talking, but we called them lectures because they were so boring. And both of us were like, dude, we're never going to have anything to do with any of this when we get to be grown-ups.
It's like your dad telling you to shut the light switch off, right? Shut the light off.
Yeah, exactly. But it wasn't like that. It was just like, it wasn't even a lecture. It was just like, man, we put a spray field in and we're reclaiming this wastewater to a tertiary treatment and we're doing this. And he was excited and like telling us about it. It wasn't a lecture. It was like about his day. But me and him would look at each other and be like, this is lecture number 87. So that's part of it is like I grew up in a house with where that was always part of the question. And both my mom and dad were from very much hunting families. My mom, I've never known her to hunt anything, but her dad was an avid bird hunter, one of the best quail hunters I've ever met in my life. So we were kind of in it to win it from the beginning, in that both of my parents had kind of this conservation ethic. They cared about wildlife. They cared about wild Florida. They cared about the outdoors. When we went on vacation, we didn't go. I went out of state twice as a kid. But before I turned 18, I went out of state twice.
Wow.
And both of those were to see relatives in Mississippi. We never traveled except in Florida. We went to deer camp. We went to turkey camp. We went to Boca Grande and snook fished, or Little Gasparilla and snook fished. Like, so it's hard to say a singular moment. I mean, I've got lots of great stories of being a kid and growing up in that space and getting eaten alive by mosquitoes and catching redfish and snook and all the things. But what my parents taught me was how special this place is. And I fell in love with Florida. And it's inescapable inside me. And so whenever I see you guys, I'll say specifically, Tristan, I know that you fell upstairs. You married out of your league. But if somebody's messing, if somebody's messing with her, you are not going to sit idly by and handle it, right?
Right.
But if you go out to a bar and some guy goes up, talks to her, you're going to bristle, but you're not going to just punch him, right? You're going to go over there and be like, "Hey, she's with me." I feel a protectionism of Florida in that way.
What a great way to say
because
it.
I was raised to fall in love with it. And the other thing that I say, you mentioned Christianity a minute ago, Tony.
Yeah.
There's a term in Christianity called a cradle Christian, where you just kind of raised in the church and you don't go through adversity the same way. You just kind of like, you don't even know. You just are kind of a cradle Christian. You just are born born into it almost.
Yeah.
I love the term a cradle conservationist. And that's what I kind of term what I was brought up as. And the vast majority of people are not going to have that situation. I know people that work at DEP that hunt and have kids, so maybe their kids have the same experience I do. But like the vast majority of people aren't going to get that. I very much got that experience because, again, when we went to deer camp, my mom was right there in deer camp, and she'd drive us up and down the trails in my grandfather's Jeep, looking for deer, looking for foxes, looking for squirrels, looking for all sorts of things. Even if I wasn't out hunting, I was out in the woods doing stuff with those people. So it's hard to say, there was this one moment or this one trigger point, because it was just a multitude of little bitty incremental steps that were applied to my life for a long period of time that ended up with me where I'm at. And if you'd asked me at 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 27, no way am I working in conservation or environmental stuff. That's boring. That's what my dad did.
Man.
And here we are.
Do you know what you are? You are a conservation evangelist. I love it. Bro, it just hit me. I'm like, put that under his title.
That might be as good as duck ranching with the logo and all
Oh,
that.
man. Dude, it just hit me. And Tristan's looking at me. He's like, we're trying to wrap it up and be respectful of your time. And I'm like, I have to say this.
Well, before I get off topic real quick, John Williamson submitted that question, so thank you for submitting that question.
Thank you, John.
But I remembered what I was going to ask earlier, and you have as much time to answer this as you want, Travis. I don't want to rush you off, but if you got to get going, I completely understand.
No, you're good, guys. I'm good.
One of the things I wanted to ask is, I feel like the Delta Waterfowls and the Ducks Unlimited of the world get this, like, I think if people aren't seeing like a direct, like, okay, they're building a new impoundment in my backyard, I think a lot of people get just feel like they're like, man, I'm not going to giving them any more of my money. They're
it's like
not
church.
And I've always, like, obviously if you look into what these organizations are actually doing, there's a lot more to the picture.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's just a lot of people that don't get like the full picture of that, and I figured there would be nobody better to ask than, I know you've mentioned before how big of a role Delta's played in standing with you on issues in Florida, but I would just love to hear your 2 cents on that.
Okay, let me say it this way. I love both of those organizations. Big fan of both of those organizations, member of both of those organizations. I'm going to tell you, you need both of those organizations.
Yes.
And here's why. Because people hang up on the wrong thing. And at the end of this, I'm going to tell you why you can give me money. But people hang up on the wrong thing. And where they hang up is this. Ducks Unlimited does incredible wetlands restoration work. Incredible wetlands restoration work. They helped write NACA, which is the National Wetlands Conservation Act. I'm missing an A in there somewhere, but it's close to that. But DU helped create this policy where the federal government would fund wetlands restoration. And then because they helped write the policy, they also developed a way that they could get grants or funding out of the policy to go do the wetlands restoration, because who better to do it than this organization that helped write the policy?
Right.
And there's people out there that are skeptical and say, well, they're double dipping and okay, whatever. Come up with a better solution then. Yeah, like come up with a better solution then. But get off my yard, because at the end of the day, Ducks Unlimited, there is no one better to do that than DU.
Right.
I mean, period, full stop. Delta is going to step into the arena every day for duck hunters. Now, Ducks Unlimited will sometimes dabble into that, but where Ducks Unlimited is at its most effective is in doing wetlands restoration, protecting wetlands. Like that's in their slogan or mission statement or whatever. Versus Delta is going to show up for the duck hunter. Without DU doing land restoration, we're not going to have ducks. We're not going to have places to hunt. Without Delta showing up for the hunter, we're not going to have policies and procedures in place that allow the duck hunter access to things. So I need both of those organizations to exist and operate at full capacity to be successful as a waterfowler.
Yes.
Like Delta out in the Midwest is going to put a bunch of ducks over decoys. They're going to work on hen boxes or hen houses and predator control. DU is going to work at more land for national wildlife refuges and more private land holdings that are developed into wetlands restoration. And people are going to say, oh, they're just doing that so they get a private land dollar. No, dude, the more habitat that exists, the more ducks that are going to exist.
Yep.
Like, it's the end. So if you think you're going to get tribal about it, and I can say this, you guys can't, but I can say this. The most tribalism I see is from members, not staff, members. Those organizations are like, oh, I'm a DU guy, you can't be Delta, and I'm a Delta guy, you can't be DU. Baloney, dude. You need both organizations, and you need, and maybe your heart is with one or the other. That's fine. I'm totally down with that. If you're a private landowner and you want to put an easement on your property and you want to work with DU, I totally understand why you would be all DU all the time. If you're a public land duck hunter and you're fighting for access and fighting to get new quota permits and fighting to get season changes or whatever, I see why you might be more Delta than ducks. But at the end of the day, there doesn't need to be this tribalism where the other one is the enemy or the other one is bad or anything else.
That's
the reason I couch all that under the umbrella is so much of the work that we have to do is behind the scenes.
Yes.
So much of the work, people want to contribute to policy or contribute to programs. They want me to put together a youth hunt and they'll give us money. They want me to put together a women's hunt and they'll give us money. They want me to put together this hunt or that hunt.
I want results right now.
Yeah. That's what they want to see, because that's a tangible thing they can look at.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, where hunters and anglers do get their ass kicked is they're not in the right rooms in Tallahassee or DC or Atlanta or, they're not in the capitals and they're not fighting on the policies that are going to make sure that they're always represented.
And
now,
that's what you do, dude. I can't know.
That's what we do.
Yes, I can't.
At the Florida level, that's what we do.
Yes, you do.
And when we call, we will often get the first phone call and fight through it. And when we call and we say, hey, Ed at Ducks Unlimited or Cyrus at Delta, we need your help. Those guys are always right there. They're our brothers in arms and they jump in the trenches with us.
Yeah.
But from a position if you're in the state of Florida and you want conservation to get done, fund Delta, fund ducks, fund all Florida. If you're on the fishery side, fund CCA. Like, you don't have to love everything that all those organizations do. But I'm telling you, as a guy that we're recording this in August,
Mm-hmm.
and it is the end of August. We recorded, I think, on the 24th, 25th. I've slept in my bed 4 nights this month.
Wow.
Holy smokes.
We're up and down the state, and those organizations I just mentioned, I see them all over the place.
Yeah.
I see them all over the place.
Well, and can I add just this, Travis, and forgive me, I'm not trying to jump ahead of anything here, but you know, if you're a new person and you're just trying to figure out, I'm just like trying to side with the average person that doesn't have a lot of money to donate to conservation, or sometimes they might see like, man, you know, how can my few dollars make a difference? You know, man, there's so many programs you can get involved in and just putting your physical efforts in place. You know, I know here in Georgia, we got WMAs that have monthly like trash pickup. You can just go get involved that way. If that's all you can afford, don't let it overwhelm you. Don't feel like you have to have thousands of dollars. Don't feel like you be intimidated to go to a Ducks Unlimited banquet or anything like that. Nobody's going to make you spend your money. Go there and just evaluate and find what you find the passion in, and give whatever you have. It doesn't have to be, anything is appreciated. Anything.
Oh, yeah. Like, since we're talking about this, Tristan has been one of our donors since like the first time we did a podcast. Like, he gives us a little bit every month, and it's you have no idea how far that goes for tanks of gas driving up and down the road, or lunches when I mean, we're not eating at Roost Chris.
Right.
We're eating at Subway, brother. So like, it really is helpful keeping the people that fight for the things that you care about in the rooms where you can't be is critically important. And that doesn't always translate into rosy programs, but it definitely is a thing that everybody needs to be funding, everybody needs to be fighting for.
And on that note, Travis, if you wouldn't mind, you know, kind of plug All Florida and plug kind of your 2-minute commercial on All Florida and kind of what you guys are doing and what, how people can get involved and connect with you there, but also on, Travis Thompson.
Yeah, all Florida, you can find us at allfla.org. You can read about some of the stuff we've done there, but you can also find us on social media, allfla.org, no dot, or you can find me at Travis Thompson. But our goal is we do 3 things. We do education, we do advocacy, and we do policy. So policy means we're going to go into those rooms in Tallahassee or FWC meetings or DEP or whatever, and we're going to fight for policies that we think make conservation in Florida better. Advocacy is we're going to do that in the public arena. Like, we're not doing it behind closed doors. We're not writing bills. We're actually going to go show up and speak up. That in Florida, that's primarily through like FWC meetings or public forums, county commission meetings, et cetera. And the last thing we do is education, not just of the public and not just through social media and outreach those ways or doing podcasts and things like this, but also we show up at schools, and we have partnered with some county school districts and farm bureaus around the state where we teach kids about the Florida Wildlife Corridor. We teach them about hunting as a tool of conservation. And to date, I think we've taught about 7,000 kids in the last year,
Wow.
3rd and 4th graders in the state of Florida. So you want to talk about a tangible thing that you can see that is moving the needle in a major way. We won't see the results of those seeds that we've planted for years to come. But when those kids are 25, 30, 35 years old, I'm hopeful that they remember that we built this giant puzzle and we took it to their school and showed them how to put it together and how to walk the corridor, and all the importance of touching a duck feathers or a duck band or an alligator skull or the pelt of a squirrel or any of that stuff. We're able to tangibly bring conservation to those kids. And that's a thing that's like a really cool thing. Again, it's not a singular program we do. We partner with the school districts and kind of help figure out where we fit in with them, with the farm bureaus and organizations like that. And wherever we can find a crack, we're going to stick our nose under the tent and see if we can get in there. So it's really a powerful thing, and we're really proud of it. We're growing. We're a new organization. We've been around about 3 years, but we'd love to have people support. And ultimately, what we want is people's trust. I said earlier we were one of the organizations that led on the right to fish and hunt, but we've led on a bunch of things. We've fought initially on restricted hunting areas. We fought over stopping the oil drilling in the Apalachicola River. We've been involved in things like the land swaps, and we show up in every room. We try to have people in as many rooms as we can up and down the state all the time, representing conservation in Florida. So we appreciate you guys giving us some time and like I say, being supporters of us for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I still got the sticker on my camera case, and everywhere we go, I got an All Florida sticker. So
People always ask about it.
Yeah. So
I gotta get you a new one. I'll send you guys a new one. I'll send you a couple of hats too.
sounds good, man.
Appreciate it.
We'd like to return the favor and send you a koozie and a little merch pack.
I've been southbound, I've been hellbound, riding on a midnight train. Going too fast now, think I'll slow down, standing in the pouring rain.